The janitor who broke the galactic code. The worthless human. A humble beginning. Nobody paid attention to the human pushing the cleaning cart through the corridors of Station Omega-7. Why would they? Humans were considered the bottom of the galactic hierarchy. They had no natural armor like the KRYLL, no telepathic abilities like the Mindari, and no advanced technology like the Valorian Empire. They were simply there, doing the jobs nobody else wanted. David Martinez had been a janitor on the station for 3 years. Every day was the same routine. Wake up in his tiny quarters, put on his gray jumpsuit, and clean up after the thousands of alien species that called this massive trading station home. The work was hard, the pay was minimal, and the respect was non-existent. The universal puzzle. Station Omega-7 was more than just a trading post. It was the central hub where the galaxy's greatest minds gathered to solve problems, conduct research, and push the boundaries of science. The station's main attraction was the Quantum Archive, a massive database containing knowledge from 10,000 civilizations spanning millions of years. For the past 50 years, the galaxy's brightest scientists had been trying to crack the archive's deepest secret, the universal code. This mathematical formula was said to unlock instantaneous communication across any distance, allow ships to travel faster than light without using fuel, and provide unlimited clean energy. The civilization that created the archive had left clues scattered throughout their database, but nobody could solve the puzzle. Alien scientists worked day and night in the research wing. The Valorians brought their quantum computers. The Mindari used their collective consciousness to process millions of calculations simultaneously. The KRYLL applied their ancient mathematical systems that had evolved over 10,000 years. Yet nobody made progress. An unexpected discovery. David's daily route took him through the research wing every evening after the scientists left for the day. He would empty trash bins, mop floors, and clean the touchscreens covered in alien mathematical symbols. Most people would ignore the complex equations displayed on every surface, but David had a habit of reading while he worked. Back on Earth, David had been a mathematics teacher before economic collapse forced him to seek work in space. Numbers had always been his passion, his escape from a difficult life. Even now, as he cleaned, his mind automatically processed the equations he saw on screens and whiteboards. One evening, while cleaning the main research lab, David noticed something strange. 3 different alien species had been working on the same problem from different angles, but they kept making the same mistake. They were all approaching the universal code as a linear progression, when David could see it was actually recursive, building upon itself in layers. He stopped pushing his mop and stared at the main display screen. His hand moved almost automatically, picking up a cleaning cloth and wiping away part of an equation. Then, using his finger on the dusty screen, he wrote a single correction. The moment he finished, the screen flickered. Then it began to glow. Suddenly, every display in the room lit up with cascading equations, each one building on David's simple correction. The computers had been waiting for that one piece, and now they were solving themselves. The morning after. When the research team arrived the next morning, they found their lab transformed. Every screen showed completed calculations. The universal code had been solved overnight. Security footage showed a human janitor making one small change, which had unlocked everything. Dr. Zyloff, the lead Valorian researcher, watched the footage 3 times. His 7 eyes blinked in disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered. "That human made a correction that our quantum computers missed." "How?" The station's administrator, a massive KRYLL named Commander Thorax, immediately ordered David to be brought to the research wing. When David arrived, still holding his mop, he found himself surrounded by the galaxy's greatest minds, all staring at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to anger. "You," Dr. Zyloff pointed one of his 4 arms at David. "Explain what you did." David looked at the screens, confused by all the attention. "I just corrected a mistake. The equation was treating the code as a straight line, but it's actually a spiral. Each layer contains the previous layers, folded into themselves." It's similar to a mathematical concept from Earth called fractal geometry. The room fell silent. Then, a Mindari scientist named Essence spoke, her telepathic voice echoing in everyone's mind. Fractal geometry? We reviewed human mathematical knowledge. Your species barely understands basic quantum mechanics. Well, David said carefully, we might not have fancy technology, but humans have been studying patterns for thousands of years. We see them everywhere, in nature, in music, in art. Mathematics is just another type of pattern. Rising tensions. Over the next few days, the research team tested David's solution extensively. It worked perfectly. The universal code could now provide instantaneous communication, unlimited energy, and the potential for faster-than-light travel without fuel consumption. It would change the entire galaxy. But not everyone was happy about a human making this discovery. The Valorian Empire had invested billions of credits and 50 years of research into solving this problem. They expected to control the technology when it was finally unlocked. Instead, a janitor from a species they considered primitive had beaten them to it. Ambassador Kelran of the Valorian Empire called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. This human must have stolen the solution from our research, he declared. There is no other explanation. We demand a full investigation. The Mindari representative disagreed. Our telepaths examined the human's thoughts. He genuinely solved the problem through his own understanding. He did not steal anything. Then the human must be some kind of spy or secret weapon sent by Earth, Ambassador Kelran insisted. His entire background must be investigated. Perhaps humans have been hiding their true capabilities all along. A simple truth. While the politicians argued, David continued his janitorial duties. He tried to stay away from the controversy, but reporters from across the galaxy wanted to interview him. Security had to escort him everywhere to keep away the crowds. One evening, a young KRYLL scientist named Kira found David sitting alone in a quiet corridor, eating his simple dinner. She sat down beside him, her armored plates clicking softly. Why do you still work as a janitor? She asked. You solved the greatest puzzle in galactic history. You could demand anything. David smiled. Because it's my job. I like keeping things clean and orderly. That's how I noticed the mistake in the first place. When you clean something every day, you start to see patterns, to notice when things don't fit right. But you're famous now. The entire galaxy knows your name. Fame doesn't interest me, David said. I just saw a problem and fixed it. That's what humans do. We might not have advanced technology or special abilities, but we're good at solving problems with what we have. Kira's antenna twitched thoughtfully. My people have a saying, true wisdom often comes from unexpected places. I think your species understands this better than most. As the first part of David's journey concluded, he had no idea that his simple act of correcting an equation would set off a chain of events that would forever change humanity's place in the galaxy. The real challenge was just beginning. The human solution. The Empire's challenge. 3 weeks after David solved the universal code, the Valorian Empire issued a formal challenge. If humans were truly capable of advanced problem-solving, they argued, then humanity should prove it. The Empire proposed a series of tests, each designed to push the limits of intelligence, creativity, and adaptability. Ambassador Kelran stood before the Galactic Council, his voice carrying the weight of his civilization's pride. We propose a fair evaluation. Let the human attempt to solve 5 impossible problems that have stumped our greatest minds. If he succeeds, we will acknowledge humanity's intellectual capabilities. If he fails, we demand that Earth's status remain as a service species. Earth's small delegation had no choice but to accept. They had only one representative on the station, a young diplomat named Sarah Chen who had been advocating for humanity's advancement for years. She found David in his quarters, packing his few belongings. They're going to make you take impossible tests, Sarah said. Problems that entire civilizations couldn't solve. You don't have to do this. David looked up from his packing. What happens if I refuse? Humanity remains where we are. Bottom of the hierarchy. Forever. Then I have to try, David said simply. What's the worst that can happen? The 5 trials. The first trial took place in a massive arena filled with thousands of spectators from across the galaxy. David stood alone in the center, facing a holographic display of the first problem, the resonance paradox. Dr. Zyloff explained the challenge. Every spaceship in the galaxy experiences energy loss during long-distance travel. This loss, called resonance decay, costs trillions of credits annually. Solve this problem, and you save the entire galactic economy billions every year. The Valorians had worked on this problem for centuries. They had built supercomputers dedicated solely to calculating solutions. All had failed. David studied the holographic equations for 30 minutes while the crowd watched in silence. Then he started to laugh. What's so funny, human? Ambassador Kelran demanded. You're trying to stop the resonance, David said. But you can't stop it. It's part of how space itself works. Instead of fighting it, use it. He walked to the holographic display and began drawing diagrams with his hands. Ships lose energy because they're pushing against spacetime. But if you design the hull to work with the resonance instead of against it, the energy loss becomes energy recycling. It's like sailing with the wind instead of against it. The Valorian engineers ran simulations. David's solution worked. Ships could now travel with 90% less energy loss. The challenges continue. The second trial involved solving a diplomatic crisis between 2 species that had been at war for 300 years. The Kroth and the Solani had territorial disputes that no mediator could resolve. David spent an entire day talking with representatives from both species, not about their war, but about their cultures, their food, and their families. Then he proposed something simple, a shared space station where both species could trade and work together, with profits divided equally. But we've tried economic cooperation before, the Kroth representative said. It always failed because neither side trusted the other with the finances. Then let a neutral third party handle the money, David suggested. Humans. We have no stake in your conflict. We'll manage the station, keep the accounts transparent, and ensure both sides benefit equally. You fight over resources because you're afraid the other side will cheat you. Remove that fear, and the fighting becomes pointless. The solution was so simple that both species felt embarrassed they hadn't thought of it themselves. The war ended within a month. The impossible mathematics. The third trial was pure mathematics. The Mindari had presented a quantum probability equation that seemed to have no solution. Their collective consciousness had worked on it for 50 years. David looked at the equation for 5 minutes, then asked for a whiteboard. He didn't use advanced calculus or quantum theory. Instead, he drew simple shapes, circles, squares, and triangles. This isn't a math problem, David explained. It's a philosophy problem disguised as mathematics. You're trying to calculate probability in a quantum state, but quantum mechanics says that observation changes the outcome. The equation has no solution because it's asking you to observe without observing. He drew a circle containing a triangle. The answer isn't a number. The answer is accepting that some things can't be calculated, only experienced. The probability exists in all states until you stop trying to measure it. The Mindari collective fell silent for several minutes. Then Essence spoke, her telepathic voice filled with wonder. In 50 years, we never considered that the equation itself was flawed. We assumed because it could be written, it must have an answer. The engineering puzzle. The fourth trial involved designing a propulsion system that could work in zero-gravity environments where traditional engines failed. The KRYLL had lost countless mining operations in deep space because their equipment stopped working in areas where gravity was completely absent. David spent a week in the engineering lab, not designing anything new, but studying how Earth's oldest civilizations moved water uphill without pumps. He looked at ancient aqueducts, windmills, and lever systems. Then he built a simple prototype using nothing but magnets and rotating coils. You don't need gravity, he explained to the confused engineers. You need force and direction. This creates its own magnetic field that pushes against the surrounding space. No fuel needed, no gravity required. The KRYLL engineers tested the design in every zero-gravity environment they could find. It worked perfectly every time. The final test. The fifth and final trial was announced with great ceremony. Ambassador Kelran himself presented the challenge: decrypt an ancient alien language that had been discovered on a dead world. Thousands of researchers had tried for decades. The language seemed to have no pattern, no grammar, and no connection to any known communication system. David was given access to every piece of research, every attempted translation, and every theory. The galaxy waited. For 3 days, David didn't emerge from the research lab. Sarah brought him food, which he barely touched. The pressure was immense. For successes meant nothing if he failed the final test. On the 4th day, David called a press conference. Every news agency in the galaxy attended. Billions watched on their screens. I can't translate this language, David announced. The crowd erupted in noise. Ambassador Kelran smiled triumphantly. Sarah's heart sank. But David raised his hand for silence. I can't translate it because it's not a language. It's music. He played a recording, taking the alien symbols and converting them into sound frequencies. Suddenly, beautiful music filled the arena. It was a song, telling the story of a civilization that had learned to communicate through pure emotion and harmony. They didn't write words, David explained. They wrote feelings. Each symbol represents a musical note that triggers specific emotions. Together, they create complex ideas and stories. We couldn't translate it because we were looking for logic in a system built on emotion. A new beginning. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. The Valorian Empire had no choice but to honor their agreement. Humanity had proven their worth. But something more important happened. Species across the galaxy began to reconsider their assumptions about intelligence, about worth, and about what it meant to be advanced. Dr. Zyloff publicly apologized to David. We confused technology with intelligence, he said. We assumed that because humans lacked advanced tools, they lacked advanced thinking. We were wrong. Earth was granted full membership in the Galactic Council. Humans were no longer service workers, but equals. Universities across the galaxy began studying human problem-solving methods. The simple approaches that humans took for granted, pattern recognition, creative thinking, and emotional intelligence, became valued skills. David returned to his job as a janitor, despite offers of prestigious positions. When asked why, he gave the same answer he always did: I like keeping things clean and orderly. Besides, someone has to notice the small problems before they become big ones. But now, when he walked through the station's corridors with his cleaning cart, other species stopped to greet him with respect. Young students asked him for advice. Scientists consulted him on their projects. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not through superior technology or military might, but through something more fundamental: the ability to see solutions where others saw only problems, to find simplicity in complexity, and to remember that wisdom often comes from the most unexpected places. David Martinez, the janitor who broke the galactic code, had taught the entire galaxy a lesson they would never forget: true intelligence isn't about having the best tools or the most advanced technology. It's about knowing how to use what you have, seeing patterns others miss, and never forgetting that sometimes the simplest answer is the right one. The end. A HFY Codex Archives original story.